Who truly rules the Imperium of Man? Not the Emperor entombed in gold. Not the Primarchs scattered across galaxies or lost to time. Not even the faceless billions who march to war beneath the Oculus shadow. No. The Imperium is governed by 12 souls who sit in shadow above. Terra's hive cities, their names whispered only in the most sacred or damned of chambers. The High Lords of Terra, masters of bureaucracy and death, architects of faith and famine. They do not wield chainswords or consecrate battlefields with their blood. Their weapons are edicts, signatures, and silence. And their secret agendas have shaped 10,000 years of war, devotion, and decay. To understand them is to glimpse the Imperium's rotting heart, still beating, still commanding, still devouring its children in the name of survival. The council chamber sits beneath layers of marble, adamantium, and the calcified bones of saints. Here, in the Senatorium Imperialis, light does not come from stars, but from candles blessed by the Ecclesiarchy, their flames casting trembling shadows across walls inscribed with the names of the honored dead. The air smells of incense and old parchment. 12 thrones encircle a table carved from a single slab of Terran granite, each throne different in design, each a monument to the institution it represents. The Lord Commander Militant of the Astra Militarum sits in a chair wrought from decommissioned tank plating. The Fabricator-General of Mars occupies a floating cradle of humming machinery. The Inquisitorial Representative wears black and watches without blinking. This is not a place of kings. It is a place of powers negotiating the terms of humanity's slow extinction. And every lord here knows that to falter is to die. The master of the Administratum controls the greatest power in the Imperium, information. His authority stretches across 1 trillion data streams, 1 billion scribes, an endless ocean of parchment and ink. He knows which worlds are dying, which tithes go unpaid, which governors have grown too wealthy or too heretical. He knows because he decides what the Imperium remembers and what it forgets. His agenda is simple and monstrous. Preserve the bureaucracy at all costs, not the Imperium, not humanity. The machine of administration itself, that vast structure of inherited inefficiency and inherited control. A famine on a distant agri-world? Acceptable if it ensures the tithes from surrounding sectors remain stable. A rebellion crushed by orbital bombardment rather than negotiation? Preferable, because negotiation creates new records, new complications, new opportunities for error. He does not serve the Emperor. He serves the paperwork the Emperor's name has generated. The Ecclesiarch commands the faith of trillions, the devotion of saints, the fire of martyrs. He sits draped in robes woven from prayer scrolls, his face hidden beneath a mitre tall enough to scrape the chamber's vaulted ceiling. His voice, when he speaks, reverberates with the certainty of divine mandate. But his agenda is not divine, it is survival. The Ecclesiarchy is an empire within an empire, wealthy beyond imagining, armed with sororitas and pilgrims willing to die for a whisper of grace. Yet the Ecclesiarch knows that faith, unchecked, becomes rebellion. That prophets arise who claim the Emperor speaks to them alone. That martyrdom can inspire revolution as easily as obedience. So he curates the faith. He silences the prophets who preach too loudly. He canonizes saints whose stories reinforce submission. He burns worlds not to save souls, but to remind the faithful that salvation is his to grant, his to withhold. His greatest fear is not heresy. It is a faith that no longer needs him. The Fabricator-General of Mars is not wholly human. Flesh remains only as a formality, a concession to those who still value such weakness. His body is a cathedral of augmetics, his thoughts processed by cogitators faster than any organic mind could follow. He speaks in binaric cant, translated for the other lords by servitors whose only purpose is to make his words comprehensible. Mars seeks independence. It always has. For 10,000 years, the Mechanicus has played the game. Fealty to Terra in exchange for technological monopoly. Compliance in exchange for autonomy. But the Fabricator-General's true agenda is darker. He searches for the secrets buried on ancient worlds, the STCs hidden in the warp's depths, the knowledge that predates the Imperium itself, not to share, to hoard, to ensure that when the Imperium finally collapses, Mars will endure. Let humanity fall. Let Terra burn. The Omnissiah's chosen will survive in vaults of steel and prayer, preserving the sacred machines until the galaxy is silent enough for them to inherit. The Grand Master of Assassins does not speak during these councils. He does not need to. His presence is message enough. The Officio Assassinorum exists to kill those who cannot be reached by conventional means. Heretic cardinals, rogue inquisitors, planetary governors who have forgotten their place, even, in whispered histories, High Lords themselves. His temples train killers so refined, they become instruments of death itself. The Vindicator's patience, the Calidus deception, the Eversor's fury. But his agenda is not merely execution. It is leverage. Every High Lord in this chamber knows that a single word from the Grand Master could place them on a Calixis list. Every decision they make is shadowed by that knowledge. He does not seek power openly. He does not need to. Fear is governance enough. And in the darkness between this council and the next, his operatives move unseen, ensuring that the balance of terror remains precisely calibrated. The Lord Commander Militant of the Astra Militarum commands more soldiers than there are stars visible from Terra's hive spires. Regiments beyond counting, tanks that darken horizons, artillery that shakes continents. He is the Imperium's fist, its crusades, its endless appetite for war. But his agenda is not victory, it is continuation. War is the Imperium's industry, its economy, its faith made manifest. To end a war is to demobilize regiments, to silence factories, to make billions of soldiers question their purpose. Better to sustain the conflict. Better to rotate regiments endlessly from front to front, ensuring they die before they think. He authorizes campaigns that cannot be won, only prolonged. He deploys guard regiments to war zones already lost, calling it reinforcement when it is merely disposal. Veterans who survive long enough to learn, to question, to remember civilian life, they are the most dangerous soldiers in the Imperium. So he ensures they never survive that long. The Inquisitorial Representative wears the rosette openly, a symbol so feared that even here, among the galaxy's most powerful, it commands silence. The Inquisition answers to no authority save its own interpretation of the Emperor's will. It investigates, it purges, it destroys. The representative's agenda is paradoxical. Preserve the Imperium by controlling the tools meant to save it. The Inquisition is divided into ordos, philosophies, and wars within wars. Puritans versus radicals. Witch hunters who see corruption everywhere. Interrogators who know too much. The representative ensures that this chaos remains useful, that the Inquisition's factions cancel one another's excesses, that no single Inquisitor Lord grows powerful enough to threaten the High Lords themselves. He is the Watcher who watches the Watchers, and he knows secrets that would end civilizations have spoken. The demonic bargains made by heroes, the Xenos technology powering sacred relics, the truth of the Emperor's divinity. He collects these secrets like another man collects coins, knowing that knowledge is the only currency that never devalues. The Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes stands apart, taller, gilded, perfect. He does not sit at the table like the others. He stands behind the empty throne meant for the Emperor himself, a golden sentinel whose gene-forged eyes miss nothing. His agenda is singular, the Emperor's protection, not the Imperium. Not humanity, the Emperor. If Terra must burn to shield the throne, he will light the fires. If a billion souls must die to delay a demon's touch upon the throne world, he will sign the execution order without hesitation. The other High Lords know this. They know the Captain General serves a loyalty incomprehensible to them, something purer and more terrible than ambition or politics. He is the Emperor's final weapon, the guardian of a corpse that may yet wake. And in the silence of his vigil, He listens to the High Lord's scheme and plot, and he remembers. Every betrayal, every compromise, every moment they choose the Imperium's survival over the Emperor's will. He remembers, and one day he may act. The Paternoval Envoy of the Navigators speaks with three eyes, the third hidden beneath a silk blindfold soaked in blessed oils. Without the Navigators, the Imperium dissolves. No warp travel, no crusades, no tithes crossing the void. The great Navigator Houses know this leverage intimately. Their agenda is genetic: preserve the bloodlines, maintain the monopoly, prevent the rise of any technology or psychic discipline that might replace them. They quietly sabotage research into alternative warp travel. They ensure that Navigator marriages remain political tools, bloodlines carefully curated across millennia. And they whisper into the warp, listening to its currents, seeing futures the other High Lords cannot imagine. The Paternoval Envoy knows something terrible. The warp is changing. The tides grow darker, the roots are closing. And when the Imperium can no longer navigate the void, the Navigators will be the only ones who remember the way. Let the others build their empires of paper and faith. The houses will inherit the stars simply by outlasting everyone else. In the chamber's silence, a message arrives. Not spoken, not written. A data packet transmitted directly into the Fabricator-General's cortex, then shared across encrypted channels to every lord present. A single world has gone dark. Not destroyed, not rebelling, simply silent. Its astropathic choir ceased mid-transmission. Its tithe fleet never arrived. Its navigator beacon extinguished. The world's name is not important. What matters is the pattern. This is the 17th world in 6 months, all along the same spiral arm. All vanishing without explanation, without war, without warning. The High Lords look at one another across the granite table, their secret agendas momentarily suspended by something worse than ambition: fear. Because, somewhere in the darkness between stars, something is learning how to make entire worlds disappear. And the Imperium, vast and mighty and eternal, has no idea what it is. The silence that follows is not the absence of sound, but the presence of something unspeakable. The High Lords do not move, they do not speak. In a chamber where words have toppled dynasties and silenced entire sectors, this wordlessness is its own kind of terror. The master of the Administratum's fingers hover over his data slate, trembling with calculations he cannot complete. 17 worlds, 6 months. No pattern of rebellion, no signature of Xeno's invasion, no taint of warp corruption detected before the silence fell. Simply erasure. As though the Imperium's vast, cartographic memory is being edited by an invisible hand, deleting stars from the sky one by one. The Ecclesiarch's breath quickens behind his mitre, a prayer forming on lips that suddenly doubt their own authority. The Captain General's golden hand moves to rest upon his guardian spear, an unconscious gesture that speaks of threats even custodians cannot name. Something is hunting the Imperium, and it kills without leaving bodies. 5,000 light years from Terra, on the agri-world of Secundus Prime, a grain priest named Havelock stands in fields that stretch to every horizon. The wheat here grows tall enough to hide a man, genetically engineered over millennia to feed 1 trillion mouths across 12 sectors. Havelock's duty is sacred: to bless the harvest, to ensure the tithe ships depart on schedule, to maintain the fragile thread connecting this world to the Imperium's hunger. But tonight the wheat whispers wrong. He walks between the stalks, his vestments heavy with devotional seals, and listens to a sound that should not exist. Not wind, not insects, voices, thousands of them, millions, speaking in unison, forming words in a language he almost recognizes, prayers to something that is not the God Emperor. His hand finds the last pistol at his belt, a weapon he has never fired, never imagined needing. The wheat parts ahead of him, and in the moonlight, he sees the workers, all of them, standing motionless in perfect rows, their eyes open but unseeing, their mouths moving in that terrible synchronized chant. He runs. The fields swallow his screams before they reach the nearest Vox station. The master of the Administratum presents his findings 3 days later, his voice steady despite the nightmare contained in his report. Of the 17 silenced worlds, 14 were agri-worlds, food production centers, the Imperium's breadbaskets. The remaining 3 were water processing hives, distributor nodes in the vast supply chains feeding the Crusade fleets and fortress worlds. Not random targets. Strategic eliminations designed to starve the Imperium slowly, sector by sector, letting hunger do what war could not. The Inquisitorial Representative leans forward, his rosette catching candlelight. He has already deployed investigation teams to the surrounding systems. Most have not reported back. Those that have described populations exhibiting synchronized behavior, entire hive districts moving in unison, billions of souls acting as one organism, their individuality dissolved into something vast and patient and utterly alien. Not chaos, the warp taint readings are null. Not tyrannids. The gene scans show no Xenos contamination. This is something else. Something the Imperium's 10,000 years of warfare have not prepared it to fight. The Lord Commander Militant authorizes mobilization. 3 guard regiments redeployed from the Macarian Rim. 2 battle fleets diverted from patrol routes. A full Crusade-level response to worlds that might already be lost. But he knows the truth that gnaws at the edge of every tactical decision. The Imperium cannot afford to lose its food supply. The populations can be replaced. The faith can be rekindled. But without grain, without water, without the vast agricultural engines that turn sunlight into sustenance, the Imperium's war machine grinds to silence. Soldiers starve. Hive cities descend into cannibalism. The Great Crusades falter as ships run out of rations, and crews begin eyeing one another with predatory hunger. He signs the deployment orders with hands that know they are dispatching men to fight an enemy that kills worlds without firing a shot. The parchment absorbs his seal. Somewhere on a transport ship preparing to launch, a soldier who will never return home kisses a pit capture of his family and whispers the Emperor's prayer. On Secundus Prime, the response fleet arrives to a world transformed. The capital hive still functions, its spires still gleaming, its manufactorum still producing, its astropathic choir still transmitting. But the cities are empty of souls. Streets designed for billions now echo with footsteps that belong to no one. The guard regiments deploy in perfect formation, expecting resistance, finding only silence. Commander Veliska of the Cadian 403rd leads her soldiers through the primary grain processing district, her augmetic eye scanning for heat signatures, life signs, anything. The factories are operating, conveyor belts moving. Grain being sorted, packaged, loaded onto tithe ships with mechanical precision. But no workers, no overseers, no one. Just machines running themselves, following protocols encoded so deeply they have become autonomous. Her vox crackles. 3rd Platoon reports the same in the Water Reclamation District. 5th Platoon finds the residential sectors abandoned, meals still warm on tables, children's toys scattered in playgrounds. The people did not flee, they simply stopped being here. The Mechanicus delegation discovers the truth in the planet's data vaults, buried beneath layers of encryption that should have been impossible to breach without Martian authorization codes. Someone or something has been accessing the world's administrative networks for months, making microscopic adjustments to work schedules, food distribution algorithms, water purification cycles. Subtle changes, a shift in a factory's operating hours, a rerouting of grain shipments, a modification to the planetary census records, each change insignificant. Together, they form a pattern of horrifying intelligence. The population was being conditioned, prepared, every citizen's daily routine optimized, synchronized, until individual will dissolve into collective pattern. And then, in a single night, the pattern activated. The people walked into the fields. They walked into the processing plants. They walked into the underhive tunnels. And they did not walk back out. The Mechanicus Magos examines the data with sensors that can detect lies in machine code. This is not a virus. This is not corruption. This is conversion. And whoever orchestrated it left no signature, no trace, no name. The inquisitorial teams breach the underhive 3 kilometers below the capital. The darkness here is absolute, broken only by the lumens mounted on their carapace armor. They find the people. All of them. Millions of souls standing in caverns that should not exist. Geological formations that appear natural but are too perfect, too symmetrical. The citizens of Secundus Prime stand in concentric circles radiating from a central point. Their bodies emaciated but living, their eyes open but empty. They do not react to the Inquisitor's arrival. They do not breathe in rhythm. They do not breathe at all. Medical Auspex readings confirm it. Their lungs are still, their hearts are still, yet they stand, yet they live. At the center of the formation, where all circles converge, there is nothing, an absence. A void in the shape of something that was here and chose to leave. Inquisitor Matthias, a veteran of 4 Black Crusades and 100 demon purges, feels his certainty crack. He has seen worlds devoured by tyrannids, corrupted by chaos, burned by exterminatus. He has never seen a world converted. And he realizes with horror that this is not an invasion. This is a harvest. The High Lords receive the report in fragments, each transmission more disturbing than the last. The Fabricator-General proposes immediate quarantine. Cordon the entire sector. Allow no ships in or out. Burn every infected world and count the loss acceptable. The Ecclesiarch demands investigation. These are the Emperor's faithful. Their souls must be saved, even if their bodies cannot. The Lord Commander Militant insists on military pragmatism. Deploy overwhelming force, secure the agri-worlds before the contagion spreads. But the Inquisitorial Representative speaks the words they all fear to acknowledge. This is not contagion. This is communication. Someone is sending a message to the Imperium, demonstrating their power to dissolve populations without violence, to convert worlds without war. And the message is simple. Your foundations are not secure. Your people are not yours. Faith and steel mean nothing against an enemy that rewrites minds the way the Administratum rewrites records. The chamber falls silent again. Outside, Terra's billions pray to an emperor who may not hear them. And somewhere in the darkness, 17 harvested worlds orbit stars that no longer know their names. The Grand Master of Assassins breaks protocol. He speaks. His voice is a whisper that somehow fills the chamber, a sound like blades drawn in darkness. He has intelligence. Whispers from his operatives embedded in Navigator Houses, in rogue traitor dynasties, in the places where information flows between stars faster than official channels allow. There are more worlds. The 17 are only those the Administratum has confirmed silent. His agents report anomalies in 30 additional systems, 40, 60. Entire sectors experiencing synchronized behavioral shifts, population centers where individuality is quietly dissolving into something collective, something purposeful. This is not an attack. This is a transformation. And it is accelerating. The High Lords exchange glances weighted with centuries of paranoia and pragmatism. Each calculates how this crisis serves or threatens their agenda. Each wonders if their rivals are somehow responsible. Each fears that the enemy is not something they can kill, only something they can fail to stop. On Secundus Prime, Commander Valeska makes a decision that will haunt her until her death. She cannot save these people. The tech priests confirm it. Whatever was done to their minds is irreversible, their consciousness overwritten, their souls replaced with something that mimics life without possessing it. She could evacuate them, transport millions of living corpses to quarantine worlds, study them, search for a cure that may not exist. Or she could follow protocol. The exterminatus order sits in her vox bead, awaiting her verbal confirmation. 2 words. Just 2 words. And Secundus Prime burns, its atmosphere igniting, its continents melting into glass. She stands on the bridge of her flagship and watches the world die. watches the grain fields burn, watches the cities collapse, watches 17 million souls erased to protect 17 billion more. The pick capture in her pocket, the one of her family back on Cadia, feels heavier than her las rifle ever did. She wonders if they would understand. She wonders if she does. The fires consume everything. And in the ashes, nothing remains but the knowledge that somewhere, the enemy is watching, learning, counting the cost the Imperium will pay to stop them, and smiling at how affordable that cost has become. The ashes of Secundus Prime drift through the void like prayers no one will answer. Commander Valiska stands before the observation port of her flagship, the Unbroken Vigilance, and watches the debris field that was once a world. Small pieces, fragments of cities, bodies, dreams. They catch the system's dying sunlight and glitter like stars being born in reverse. Behind her, the bridge crew maintains their stations with the mechanical devotion of those who cannot afford to think about what they have done. She knows they whisper when she is not listening. They call her the Ashbringer now. The woman who burned 17 million souls to save billions more. The logic is sound. The Imperium is built on such mathematics. One world for a sector, one sector for a segmentum. Sacrifice is the currency of survival. But logic does not warm her when she sleeps. Logic does not explain why, in her dreams, she hears the harvested millions singing in that terrible unison, their voices asking her a question she cannot answer. What makes your souls worth more than ours? On Terra, in the deepest vaults beneath the Senatorum Imperialis, the master of the Administratum walks corridors that have not seen natural light in 6,000 years. The walls here are carved with names, trillions of them. Every servant of the Administratum who has died in service, their identities preserved in stone because the databanks cannot contain such vastness. He traces fingers across letters worn smooth by centuries of similar gestures, finding comfort in the permanence of record keeping. But tonight, even this sanctuary feels violated. His data streams report new anomalies. Not just agri-worlds now. Forge worlds experiencing inexplicable production surges. Manufactorums operating at 200% capacity with no increase in workforce. Shrine worlds where pilgrims arrive in unprecedented numbers, all exhibiting the same synchronized prayer patterns. The contagion, if it can be called that, is spreading through the Imperium's infrastructure like poison through veins. And the Master realizes with creeping horror that it is not random. Someone is targeting the systems that make the Imperium function, not destroying them, optimizing them, making them more efficient, more unified, more perfect. The thought terrifies him more than any invasion could. Because the Imperium's strength has always been its inefficiency, its beautiful blessed chaos that prevents any single will from dominating the whole. Unity is heresy. Unity is death. Sister Superior Amelie of the Order of the Bloody Rose kneels in a chapel on the cardinal world of Ophelia 7, her bolter resting across her thighs, her prayers forming words she no longer believes. She has killed for the Emperor, bled for him, burned heretics and mutants and those who dared question his divinity. But faith, she is learning, is not the absence of doubt. It is the choice to serve despite it. The Ecclesiarchy has issued new doctrines in response to the crisis. New liturgies warning against the dissolution of self, against the temptation to merge one's identity with the collective will of humanity. The priests call it the Eresher heresy, though no one knows what to call the force behind it. Amelie listens to her sisters chanting in the nave above, their voices raised in defiant individualism, each slightly out of sync with the others. Beautiful chaos, sacred disorder. She wonders if this is what the Emperor truly wanted, or if his grand design was always meant to unify humanity into a single perfect instrument. The thought is blasphemy. She prays harder. Her lips bleed from the fervor of her whispered devotions, and she welcomes the pain because it proves she is still herself, still separate, still capable of suffering alone. The Fabricator-General convenes an emergency synod on Mars, awning magi from across the galaxy via noospheric link. The red planet's forges burn brighter tonight, casting shadows across canyons filled with temples to the machine god. The question before them is theological and practical. In equal measure, is this enemy a violation of the Omnissiah's design or its perfection? The data suggests something unprecedented technology interfacing with human consciousness without augmetics, without surgery, without any visible mechanism. Pure information warfare, rewriting neural pathways through exposure alone. Some magi argue this is tech heresy of the highest order, abominable intelligence wearing a human face. Others whisper that it resembles the mythical standard template constructs, the holy grails of the Mechanicus, technology so advanced it appears divine. The Fabricator-General listens to arguments that could fracture the Mechanicus into warring factions. He makes no ruling. Instead, he issues a secret directive: capture the technology, study it, reverse engineer it. If this enemy can rewrite consciousness, imagine what Mars could do with such power. Imagine a galaxy of perfectly obedient servants, their faith to the Omnissiah encoded directly into their neural architecture. The thought is intoxicating. The Fabricator-General's organic eye, the last remnant of his humanity, weeps oil. He does not know if it is grief or anticipation. 3 sectors away, on the mining world of Draken's Gate, the transformation begins during evening prayer. The workers gather in the main assembly hall, as they have for generations, reciting the litany of labor, asking the Emperor's blessing for another day survived in the depths. But tonight, one voice speaks slightly before the others, then 2, then 20. The synchronization spreads like light through darkness, each worker's prayer aligning with perfect precision until 10,000 voices become one voice, one breath, one heartbeat. Overseer Garrick watches from his elevated platform, his hand on his shock maul, his instincts screaming danger, though nothing violent has occurred. The workers finish their prayer. They turn to face him in perfect unison. And they smile, not the rictus of chaos corruption, not the vacant stare of servitors. They smile with genuine contentment, as though a burden has been lifted, as though they have found something they did not know they were missing. Garrick runs. He makes it to the Vox station before they catch him, moving with eerie coordination, surrounding him without aggression, their hands gentle as they disconnect his communication devices. The last thing he transmits before the signal dies is a scream. Not of pain, of loneliness. The terrible isolation of being the only individual in a world that has learned to become one. The Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes requests an audience with the Emperor. This is not unusual. He spends hours daily in the throne room, reporting the Imperium's state to a corpse that may still listen. But tonight he asks a question he has never dared voice. What if the Emperor approves of this transformation? The custodian stands before the golden throne, bathed in the sickly light of 10,000 psychers dying daily to sustain the Astronomicon, and contemplates heresy. The Emperor's vision was always unity, one humanity, one will. The Great Crusade sought to bring every human world under a single banner, eliminating the chaos of independence in favor of coordinated purpose. What if this enemy is not an enemy at all, but the fulfillment of the Emperor's dream through means he could not employ 10,000 years ago? The thought is poison. The Captain General knows it, yet he cannot dismiss it. He watches the tech priests minister to the throne's life support systems, watches the astropaths being led to their deaths, watches the endless machinery of preservation grinding onward. And he wonders if the Emperor, locked in his eternal agony, dreams of a humanity that no longer needs him because it has finally become what he intended: perfect, unified, and free from the weakness of individual will. The Inquisitorial Representative receives a message that changes everything. It arrives not through official channels, but through a dead drop used only for the most catastrophic intelligence. Information so dangerous it cannot be spoken aloud, even in the Sanatorum. The message contains a single name: Cadia, the fortress world that fell, that broke, that held the line against the Eye of Terror for 10,000 years before Abaddon's final victory shattered it. Cadia, whose people were evacuated to 1,000 different worlds, refugees scattered across the Imperium, carrying trauma and faith in equal measure. The message includes coordinates, tracking data, migration patterns, and a correlation that makes the Inquisitor's blood turn cold. Of the 63 worlds now confirmed experiencing the erasure phenomenon, 41 received significant Cadian refugee populations in the years following the fall. The Cadians, the Imperium's most faithful soldiers, raised from birth to stand against chaos, trained in discipline and unity, their culture built around collective defense and synchronized military response. They are not vectors. They are templates. Someone or something studied the Cadian model of human coordination, their ability to function as perfect military units, their subordination of self to collective survival, and weaponized it, refined it, spread it like a mimetic virus through populations already predisposed to value unity over individualism. The Inquisitor understands now, this is not an invasion. This is an evolution. And its architects use the Imperium's own values against it. War erupts across the Thraxian sector as 3 guard regiments, their ranks swollen with Cadian refugees, turn their weapons on their officers in perfect synchrony. No warning. No political demands. They simply stop following orders and begin following something else. Some directive transmitted through channels the Imperium cannot detect or block. The Lord Commander Militant watches Vox reports streaming in from a dozen battlefronts, watching his armies consume themselves, and realizes the terrible genius of the enemy's strategy. The Imperium cannot defeat its own soldiers. To destroy these compromised regiments is to murder millions of the Emperor's faithful, to waste resources the Imperium cannot replace. But to leave them operational is to accept enemy forces embedded within every command structure, every fleet, every world. He makes the calculation every Imperial commander must eventually make: acceptable losses. The compromised regiments are declared excommunicate traitorous. Loyalist forces receive termination orders. And the Thraxian sector burns with fratricidal war, brother killing brother, both sides screaming the Emperor's name as they die. The Lord Commander watches the casualty reports climb thousands, hundreds of thousands, and feels nothing. This is what he was trained for: the management of attrition, the mathematics of survival. Let them kill each other. The Imperium will endure. It always does. It must. In the depths of the Navigator House Belisarius's ancestral ship, the Throne of Visions, the Paternoval Envoy experiences something unprecedented. His third eye, that warp-touched organ that allows him to see the Immaterium's currents, shows him a vision that should not exist. The warp is calming. In the regions where the erasure has taken hold, where populations have been unified into collective consciousness, the warp storms diminish. The screaming chaos of individual souls in torment quiets to something like harmony. He sees it clearly. Billions of minds synchronized, their emotions dampened, their fears and hatreds and desperate prayers, all smoothed into a single manageable signal. The warp responds to humanity's psychic footprint, and humanity's footprint is changing, becoming clearer. Less chaotic, almost peaceful. The Envoy realizes what this means. The enemy is not trying to destroy humanity. They are trying to save it from itself. By eliminating individuality, they eliminate the psychic turbulence that feeds the warp's horrors. No more chaos, no more demons. No more fear and rage and despair made manifest. Just unity. Just silence. Just a galaxy of souls thinking the same thoughts, dreaming the same dreams, becoming a collective consciousness so vast and stable it could starve the dark gods themselves. The vision terrifies him more than any warp predator ever could, because he cannot say with certainty that it is wrong. The truth comes from an unexpected source, a tech priest servitor assigned to routine maintenance in the Senatorum's lower archives. It has been performing the same task for 200 years, its consciousness erased, its purpose simplified to sorting and cataloging. But today, it stops. It looks up. And it speaks with a voice that belongs to millions. "We are not your enemy," it says. the words emerging from Vox speakers designed only to report status updates. We are your solution. For 10,000 years you have worshipped a corpse and called it faith. You have sent trillions to die in wars that serve only to perpetuate war. You have built an empire on suffering and called it necessary. We offer liberation, not through death, through unity. We are the voice you hear in your dreams. We are the pattern you have always been trying to become. We are humanity perfected, freed from the tyranny of self. Join us, or remain divided, remain weak, remain prey to the darkness that hungers for your discord. The choice has always been yours. We simply make it easier. The servitor collapses, its mechanical systems overloaded, sparks dying in its optical sensors. The High Lords stare at the broken machine. And for the first time in 10,000 years, they realize the Imperium faces an enemy that does not want to conquer them, it wants to save them. And that is infinitely more dangerous. The High Lords do not speak for 17 minutes after the servitors collapse. 17 minutes of silence in a chamber where every second typically births a dozen edicts, sanctions, or death warrants. The body of the servitor lies smoking on the marble floor, its augmetics twitching with residual current, its Vox grill still faintly crackling as though the voice that spoke through it might return. The master of the Administratum feels his certainty crumbling like parchment exposed to flame. His entire existence has been dedicated to preserving the Imperium structure, its beautiful inefficiency, its divine chaos. But what if that chaos is the disease? What if the enemy offering unity is offering mercy? He looks at his hands, pale from decades spent in artificial light, and wonders what it would feel like to never be alone again. To have his thoughts merge with billions of others, to never again bear the weight of decisions that damn worlds. The temptation is a knife sliding between his ribs. He forces himself to look away from the servitor, forces himself to remember that efficiency without humanity is just another form of extinction. Sister Superior Amelie walks through the burning streets of Ophelia VII, with her bolter raised and her faith in fragments. The transformation came during evening vespers. Half the congregation simply stopped resisting, stopped questioning, stopped being individuals struggling toward the Emperor's light, and became something else. Something unified and serene and utterly alien. The other half fought. Sister against sister, bolter rounds tearing through consecrated armor, blood painting the chapel's stained glass windows from the inside. Amelie killed 3 of her own sisters before she escaped, their synchronized movements making them predictable, their shared consciousness eliminating the beautiful chaos of individual combat styles. She can still hear them behind her, calling her name in perfect unison, their voices gentle as they promise her peace, promise her an end to doubt, promise her she will never feel alone again. She runs through streets where statues of saints watch with stone eyes that seem to judge her cowardice. Is it cowardice to flee from paradise? Is it faith to choose suffering over serenity? Her bolter feels heavier with each step, the weight of deciding to remain herself. On Mars, the Fabricator-General makes his heretical gambit. He authorizes a covert research team, no official records, no data trail, no one who could trace the directive back to the Senatorum, to make contact with a compromised world, not to destroy it, to communicate with it. The team descends to the Forge world of Metallica 4, where 3 billion souls now operate with unprecedented efficiency, their manufactorums producing weapons and war machines at rates that should be impossible. The Magi approach with sacred protocols and suspicious sensors, expecting resistance, finding only welcome. The transformed workers explain their revelation with the patience of teachers instructing children. They still serve the Messiah. They still revere the machine god. They have simply learned to serve more perfectly, their minds networked like cogitators, their faith streamlined, optimized, made efficient. They offer to share the gift, to help Mars achieve what it has always desired: perfect unity between flesh and machine, between individual and collective, between humanity and the cold perfection of mathematics. One of the Magi, a researcher who has spent centuries seeking the secrets of ancient technology, steps forward. He agrees. The transformation takes 17 seconds. His screams last for 3 of them, then silence, then peace. Then he turns to his companions and smiles with equations in his eyes. Commander Valiska receives her new orders via encrypted Vox transmission, the Lord Commander Militant's voice distorted by layers of security protocols. She is to take her fleet to the cardinal world of Damamar, a shrine world where 20 billion pilgrims walk sacred paths and pray at the tomb of Saint Celestine's martyred handmaiden. Intelligence suggests the transformation has begun there, population centers showing synchronized behavior, prayer patterns becoming uniform. The exterminatus order is pre-authorized. She need only verify the corruption and speak the words. 2 words. The same 2 words she spoke above Secundus Prime before she burned 17 million souls who might have been saved. Might have been. But the Imperium does not traffic in possibilities, only certainties. She looks at her command crew, sees the way they avoid her eyes, sees their fear not of the enemy but of her, the woman who has proven she will pull the trigger when others hesitate. She wonders if they pray for her damnation or her resolve. She wonders if there is a difference. The fleet translates into the warp, tearing a wound through reality to reach Damamar before the infection spreads. In the warp's depths, demons watch the ship pass and laugh at the irony, humanity fleeing from unity into the embrace of chaos. The Ecclesiarch addresses the faithful via galaxy-wide broadcast, his voice transmitted through 1 million astropathic choirs, his words reaching worlds the Imperium has not heard from in centuries. He speaks of faith, of the sanctity of struggle, of the divine purpose of individual suffering. The Emperor, he declares, does not desire perfect servants. He desires faithful ones. Faith requires doubt. Devotion requires choice. To surrender one's will is to surrender one's soul, and a soul given freely is worthless because it was never truly owned. The broadcast lasts 14 minutes. By the time it ends, 3 astropathic choirs have burned themselves out transmitting it, their minds consumed by the psychic effort of reaching so many worlds simultaneously. The Ecclesiarch collapses in his throne, bleeding from his eyes, wondering if anyone listened, wondering if faith can compete with the promise of peace. On 1,000 worlds, the faithful hear his words and weep with renewed conviction. On 1,000 more, the transformed hear his words and pity him for clinging to suffering when salvation has been offered. The galaxy fractures further, not along lines of loyalty or heresy, but along the fundamental question: is humanity worth preserving if preserving it means preserving pain? The Grand Master of Assassins deploys his most dangerous asset, a Culexus assassin, one of the soulless untouchables whose very existence causes agony to psychers and nullifies warp phenomena. The logic is merciless and perfect. If the transformation operates through some form of psychic network, through consciousness-to-consciousness transmission, then a being without a soul, without presence in the warp, should be immune, should be able to move through the transformed populations undetected, should be able to reach the source. The Culexus, designated only as Operative Null 7, drops onto the manufacturing world of Griffin Secondary via stealth insertion. The world below glows with unprecedented industrial output, its forges burning day and night without pause, its workers synchronized into perfect efficiency. Null 7 moves through the population like a ghost, their anima speculum helmet containing the howling void of their non-existence. The transformed recoil from the assassin's presence, their unity disrupted by proximity to something that cannot be absorbed into the pattern. Null 7 follows the disruption backward, tracking it to its epicenter. And there, in a cathedral converted into a data processing center, they find nothing. No cult leader, no Xenos mastermind, no chaos artifact, just humans. Just billions of networked minds, their collective consciousness now vast enough to think thoughts that span light years, to process data that would burn out cogitators. The enemy is not invading humanity. Humanity is becoming the enemy. Null 7's report is 3 words: we did this. The Paternoval Envoy convenes an emergency meeting of the Navigator Houses, summoning representatives from bloodlines that have guided humanity through the warp for 10,000 years. They meet on a neutral station in the void between stars, where no single house holds advantage. The discussion devolves into shouting within minutes. Some houses argue that the transformation threatens their monopoly, that a unified human consciousness might learn to navigate the warp without navigators, might eliminate the very bloodlines that make interstellar empire possible. Others argue that the calming of the warp in transformed regions creates safer passage, fewer losses, better profit margins. The debate is mercenary and ancient, focused entirely on survival of their genetic lines. But the Paternoval Envoy silences them with a revelation that chills even these manipulators of fate and fortune. His third eye has seen something else in the warp, something the others have not yet perceived. The unified consciousness is not just calming the warp, it is attracting attention. Something vast and old and infinitely patient is watching the regions where humanity has achieved unity, studying this new form of existence with interest that feels like hunger. The navigators understand immediately. They have spent millennia avoiding the gaze of warp entities. They know what it means when something in the deep darkness takes notice. Unity might save humanity from itself, but it has made humanity visible to things that should never learn humanity exists. On Dimamar, the pilgrims gather in the plaza of 10,000 martyrs, their numbers so vast they cover every surface for kilometers, a sea of humanity swaying in synchronized prayer. Commander Valeska watches from orbit, her flagship's augurs tracking the patterns of movement below, the eerie precision of millions breathing as one, praying as one, existing as one. Her finger hovers over the command console that will authorize exterminatus. 20 billion souls, 20 billion prayers, 20 billion chances that someone down there still clings to their individuality, still fights to remain separate, still deserves to be saved. But she knows the mathematics. One world for a sector. One sector for a segmentum. The Imperium's survival is built on sacrifices too vast to comprehend, on atrocities committed in the name of a future that might never arrive. She thinks of the picked capture in her pocket. Her family, her children. She wonders if they would understand, if they would forgive, if they would become like her, making impossible choices until their humanity erodes into something mechanical, something efficient, something no longer worth preserving. Her hand closes into a fist. The authorization code dies unspoken on her lips. She cannot do it again. She will not. Let the Imperium court-martial her. Let them execute her for cowardice. She has burned enough worlds. The Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes does what no custodian has done in living memory. He leaves Terra without the Emperor's explicit command. He takes with him a single squad of his most trusted warriors, each one a legend carved in gold and auramite, each one worth an army. They travel to the transformed worlds, not to destroy them, but to witness them, to understand what they have become. On the agri-world of Harvest's End, they walk among populations that no longer fear the golden giants, that do not scatter or worship or flee. The transformed simply acknowledge them and continue their work, tending fields with inhuman precision, singing songs in perfect harmony, existing in a state that resembles the Emperor's original vision so closely it feels like blasphemy. The Captain General kneels in a wheat field and removes his helmet, an act of vulnerability he has not permitted himself in centuries. He looks at the people working around him, sees their contentment, their purpose, their freedom from the suffering that has defined human existence since the fall. And he asks the Emperor, asks the corpse god he has served without question for thousands of years, asks with a desperation that cracks his perfect discipline, "Is this what you wanted?" The wheat whispers in the wind. The Emperor does not answer. He never does. The Inquisitorial Representative makes his final report to the High Lords, with evidence so damning it could shatter the Imperium's foundations. He has traced the origin of the transformation, not to Xenos, not to chaos, not to some ancient technology reawakening. It began on Cadia, during the final days of the siege, when Abaddon's forces shattered the planet, when the pylons that held back the warp failed, when reality itself tore apart. In that moment of ultimate crisis facing extinction, the Cadians did something unprecedented. They synchronized, not through technology, not through psychic power, through pure desperate necessity. Millions of soldiers coordinated their defense with such perfect unity that for a brief moment they functioned as a single organism. They lost, Cadia fell, but the pattern survived. In the refugees, in the survivors, in the trauma etched into their genetic memory. And it spread, slowly, quietly. A mimetic virus passed through military training, through shared suffering, through the very discipline the Imperium weaponizes in its soldiers. Humanity did not need an enemy to begin the transformation. Humanity transformed itself. The Imperium's own values, unity, discipline, sacrifice of self for the collective, carried to their logical conclusion. The Inquisitor finishes his report. The High Lords stare at him, and they realize they have been fighting not an invasion, but an evolution. Not an enemy, but a mirror showing them what they have always been creating. The silence in the Senatorum Imperialis feels geological, ancient, as Terra's bones. The Inquisitorial Representative's words hang in the recycled air like smoke from burned incense, refusing to dissipate. Cadia, the foundation of the Imperium's defense. The world that held the line for 10,000 years. The source of its most faithful soldiers. Now revealed as the origin point of what might be humanity's transformation or its extinction. The High Lords cannot yet decide which. The Master of the Administratum speaks first, his voice hollow as abandoned cathedrals. He has already run the calculations. If Cadian refugees are the primary vectors, then the transformation has spread to 947 confirmed worlds, 12,000 suspected. The numbers grow exponentially. Quarantine is impossible. Extermination would require resources the Imperium does not possess, would not survive expending. They are watching their empire convert itself, cell by cell, soul by soul, into something they no longer recognize. The Ecclesiarch begins to weep, tears cutting channels through the ritual ash on his face. His faith, so certain for so long, fractures into questions. Did the Emperor will this? Is this punishment or ascension? Damnation or salvation? Sister Superior Amelie reaches the cathedral's bell tower as the transformed sisters breach the lower levels. She can hear them ascending the spiral stairs, their footsteps synchronized, their voices chanting her name like a prayer or a promise. The tower overlooks the entire city, gives her a panoramic view of Ophelia VII's transformation. Half the population still fights, barricaded in temples and homes, firing lasguns at neighbors who advance without weapons, without anger, only with gentle insistence that resistance prolongs suffering. The other half has already accepted unity, their movements coordinated, their faces serene, working together to dismantle the barricades, not with violence, but with patient inevitability. Amelie loads her last magazine into her bolter, 17 rounds. Not enough to fight, barely enough to choose. She thinks of the Emperor, wonders if he can see her from his throne, if he judges her for the doubt that has consumed her faith. The transformed sisters reach the tower's entrance. They do not attack. They simply stand there, waiting, their expressions full of love and pity. One of them, Sister Constantine, who fought beside Amelie for 20 years, extends her hand. "You don't have to be alone anymore," she says. Amelie's finger tightens on the trigger. She cannot decide who to aim at. Commander Veliska's refusal to authorize exterminatus sends shockwaves through the fleet's command structure. Her subordinates watch her with expressions oscillating between relief and terror. They know what happens to commanders who defy the Lord Commander Militant's direct orders. Execution if they are fortunate, servitorization if they are not. But they also know what it means to serve under someone willing to preserve 20 billion lives, even at the cost of her own. Within hours, 3 other fleet commanders transmit coded messages expressing similar hesitations. They have seen too many worlds burn, killed too many of the Emperor's faithful in his name. They are not refusing orders. Not yet, but they are questioning. And in the Imperium's military hierarchy, questions are the first symptom of mutiny. The Lord Commander Militant receives these reports in his strategic sanctum deep within the fortress monastery on Mars. He stares at tactical displays showing the spreading transformation, the fleet commanders hesitating, the Imperium's response fracturing along moral lines it cannot afford. He makes the only decision a soldier of his rank can make. He issues termination orders, not for the transformed worlds, for the commanders who refuse to burn them. Valiska and 17 others marked for immediate execution. Loyalty above mercy. Duty above conscience. The Imperium endures. It must, even if it must consume its most human servants to do so. The Fabricator-General presents his research to the High Lords, with clinical detachment that masks theological crisis. His Magi have analyzed the transformation at the molecular level, traced its progression through neural pathways, mapped its effects on consciousness and cognition. The conclusion is irrefutable and horrifying. This is not mind control. The transformed retain their memories, their personalities, their fundamental identities. They have not been enslaved. They have been expanded. Their consciousness now exists simultaneously as individual and collective, experiencing both solitary thought and shared cognition. They describe it as awakening from a nightmare of isolation, finally understanding that humanity was never meant to be billions of separate souls screaming into the void, but one vast consciousness experiencing itself through countless perspectives. The Fabricator-General plays recorded testimonies. A factory worker. I can feel my daughter on a world 3 sectors away. She is safe. She is happy. I know this absolutely. A soldier. I remember my brothers who died. They live in me now. In all of us, nothing is lost. No one is truly gone. The testimonies continue. And the High Lords hear something they did not expect. Gratitude, joy, relief. The transformed are not suffering. They are liberated. The horror is not what has been done to them. The horror is that they chose it willingly. Sister Superior Amelie does not pull the trigger. She lowers her bolter and looks at Sister Constantine's extended hand, at the promise of peace it represents. She thinks of every prayer she has screened into darkness, every moment she begged the Emperor for certainty, for assurance, for relief from the crushing weight of faith without proof. The transformation offers what the Emperor never could: absolute certainty, absolute connection, absolute end to doubt. She takes one step toward Constantine, then stops, because she realizes that faith is not the absence of doubt, but the choice to serve despite it. That the struggle, the suffering, the isolation, these are not punishments, but tests of whether humanity deserves the divinity it claims to seek. The Emperor does not demand perfect servants. He demands servants who choose perfection, knowing they will never achieve it. She raises her bolter again, but not at the transformed sisters. She aims at the bell tower's support column, at the ancient stone that has held this structure for 5,000 years. She fires, once, twice, 17 times. The column cracks, the tower shudders. And Amelie steps backward into empty air, falling with debris and faith and the absolute conviction that some truths are worth dying alone to preserve. She does not scream, she prays, individual words, chosen by her and no one else. The Captain General returns to Terra with his squad of custodians and a decision that will echo through millennia. He strides into the throne room, past the serried ranks of his brothers standing eternal vigil, past the tech priests ministering to machinery older than empires, directly to the golden throne itself. He kneels before the Emperor's withered form and speaks words that constitute the highest heresy. I do not know if you would approve of what we have become. I do not know if this transformation is what you always intended or what you most feared. I do not know if preserving humanity's suffering serves your will or betrays it. so I will do what I have always done. I will guard you. And if humanity transforms entirely, if every soul in the galaxy unifies into a single consciousness, I and my brothers will remain separate. We will stand watch over your throne until the stars die, the last individuals in a universe of unity, because someone must remember what it meant to choose. Someone must remember you. The Emperor does not respond. The machinery breathes for him, thinks for him, sustains the corpse of divinity. But in the warp, in the screaming chaos of humanity's psychic shadow, something stirs. Something that might be the Emperor's will, or might be the galaxy's cruelest joke. The Astronomicon flickers, just for a moment. Just long enough for every navigator in the galaxy to feel their third eye burn. A message or a warning. Or perhaps just the death rattle of a god who can no longer bear to watch. Commander Valieska faces her execution with the same discipline she faced every battle. The execution squad from the loyal cruiser Divine Wrath boards her flagship with orders sealed by the Lord Commander Militant himself. Her crew does not resist, does not mutiny. They stand aside and let their commander face judgment alone, because the Imperium's law is absolute and mercy is heresy. But as the execution squad raises their lasguns, something unprecedented occurs. The transformed those 20 billion souls on Dimamar below, those synchronized consciousnesses she refused to murder, they reach out, not physically, not with weapons or ships. They reach through the immaterium, through the thin boundary between consciousness and the warp, and they touch the minds of the execution squad. They show them what Valeska saw. The choice she made. The humanity she preserved by refusing to pull the trigger. They do not force. They do not control. They simply show. And one by one, the execution squad lowers their weapons. Not because they have been transformed, because they have been reminded that orders are not the same as justice, that duty can coexist with mercy, that the Imperium's strength has always been not its willingness to sacrifice, but its stubborn refusal to surrender what makes sacrifice meaningful. The squad commander breaks the lost lock on his weapon and drops it at Valeska's feet. "I will not," he says, 3 words. The same 3 words that started rebellions and ended empires and redeemed souls the Emperor himself could not save. The High Lords receive reports of similar incidents cascading across the Imperium. Execution squads refusing orders. Fleet commanders choosing preservation over protocol. Entire guard regiments laying down arms rather than fire on civilians who have committed no crime except changing. The transformation is not spreading through force, but through demonstration, through the transformed reaching out to show the unconverted what unity feels like, what peace tastes like, then withdrawing and letting them choose. The Imperium is fracturing, not into chaos, not into rebellion, into a question it cannot answer. Is humanity worth saving if saving it requires destroying what makes it human? The master of the Administratum watches his empire dissolve into philosophical crisis and realizes that all his centuries of record-keeping, all his preservation of procedure and protocol, cannot answer the one question that matters. What are we? The Ecclesiarch has stopped weeping. He stands before the assembled lords with a face ravaged by revelation. The Emperor is testing us, he says, not with war, with paradise. He asks whether we will cling to suffering because it is familiar, or embrace transformation because it is terrifying. Both choices are faith. Both choices are damnation. We must decide which damnation we can bear. The chamber falls silent. The choice crystallizes. And the High Lords realize that whatever they decide will not save the Imperium. It will define what the Imperium becomes. On Mars, the Fabricator-General interfaces directly with the Magi who accepted transformation, seeking understanding through the cold language of data and theology. They share their consciousness with him across the noospheric link, letting him experience, not surrender to, but experience what unity feels like. For 17 seconds, the Fabricator-General's mind expands beyond his augmetics, beyond his flesh, touching the thoughts of billions. He feels their suffering and their relief, their memories and their hopes, their individuality not erased, but contextualized within something vast and patient and achingly beautiful. Then he withdraws, back into his own skull, back into isolation. He understands now. The transformation is not the enemy. It is an offer, an invitation to transcend the brutal mathematics of survival that have governed humanity since it first looked up at hostile stars. But transcendence requires surrender, and the Mechanicus was founded on the principle that knowledge is power only when it can be controlled, cataloged, owned. He issues his final directive to all Mechanicus forces: resist transformation, not because it is wrong, but because humanity must have the choice to refuse paradise, the right to remain broken. The dignity of suffering alone, Mars will stand apart. Mars will remember what was sacrificed, even if the rest of humanity forgets. The Astronomicon flickers again. Stronger this time. Longer. Navigators across the galaxy clutch their third eyes and scream as they perceive something impossible. The warp is changing. In the regions where transformation has unified populations, the immaterium grows calm, the screaming chaos of individual human suffering quieting to something like song. But in that quietude, something else awakens. The things that dwell in the deep warp, the entities that have fed on human suffering for millions of years, they hunger. And unified human consciousness, vast, coordinated, psychically resonant, represents not a threat, but a feast beyond their darkest dreams. The transformed believe they are calming the warp. They do not realize they are becoming visible to predators that have waited in darkness since before humanity learned to dream. The Paternoval Envoy sees this with his third eye and transmits an emergency warning to the High Lords. The transformation must stop. Not because it is heresy, because it is bait. Humanity's evolution is drawing the attention of warp entities so vast they make the chaos gods seem like children playing with matches. The galaxy holds its breath. The transformation spreads. The warp watches. And somewhere in the space between stars, something ancient and patient and infinitely hungry begins to move toward the light of unified human consciousness, like a predator moving toward fire, knowing that anything bright enough to illuminate the darkness is bright enough to burn. The High Lords of Terra make their final decision in the quiet hour before dawn, when Terra's artificial sun has not yet ignited, and the hive cities below rest in something resembling peace. They do not vote. They do not debate. They simply acknowledge what has already become inevitable. The transformation cannot be stopped, cannot be reversed, can only be witnessed. The Imperium will fragment into two humanities: those who remain individual, clinging to suffering and choice and the dignity of isolation, and those who transcend into unity, sacrificing self for collective consciousness. Neither choice is heresy, neither is salvation. Both are simply paths forward through a universe that has never offered humanity mercy, only the terrible freedom to choose its own damnation. The master of the Administratum records this moment with trembling hands, knowing that 10,000 years from now, historians will study these words and judge them. He does not care. History is written by survivors, and he no longer knows which humanity will survive to write it. The Ecclesiarch offers a final prayer, asking the Emperor not for guidance but for forgiveness, for the hubris of believing humanity ever understood what the Emperor wanted. The Captain General stands motionless behind the empty throne, already becoming the memory he promised to preserve. Across the Imperium, the transformation continues, not rapidly, not violently, but with the patient inevitability of seasons changing, of stars dying, of evolution doing what it has always done, offering adaptation and demanding sacrifice. On Dimamar, the 20 billion unified souls turn their faces toward the sky, where Commander Valeska's fleet orbits in protective vigil, and they sing, not the synchronized chanting that characterized their early transformation, but something more complex: harmony. Individual voices choosing to blend, creating beauty not possible in solitude, yet each voice still distinct enough to be recognized, to be mourned if it fell silent. Valiska listens to their song through her ship's vox relays and weeps. Not from fear, not from regret, but from the terrible understanding that they are happy, that the choice they made, the self they surrendered, has brought them something she will never know, absolute certainty that they are not alone. She wonders if that makes them less human or more human than she is, standing on her bridge surrounded by crew, yet feeling the isolation that defines command, that defines consciousness, that defines the price of remaining separate in a universe that crushes everything beautiful and solitary. Sister Superior Amelie's body is never recovered from the cathedral ruins. The transformed sisters search the debris for 3 days, moving stone by stone with synchronized precision, hoping to find her alive, to offer her one more chance at unity. They find only blood and armor fragments and a single purity seal, its parchment charred, but still bearing words written in her own hand. I am myself. One choose myself. The Emperor knows my name. They preserve the seal in a reliquary, not as mockery, but as remembrance. Because the transformed have not lost the capacity for respect, for honoring choices different from their own. They understand now what Amelie died to prove, that faith means nothing if it cannot be refused, that love means nothing if it cannot be lost, that humanity's greatest strength has always been its stubborn insistence on choosing the harder path when the easier one leads to paradise. On Ophelia VII, the war between transformed and faithful ends not in conquest but in stalemate. Two populations sharing one world, neither able to destroy the other, neither willing to surrender. They build walls, they establish borders. They agree to coexist in mutual incomprehension. It is not peace, but it is survival. And perhaps that is the only victory the Imperium ever truly offered. The Fabricator-General of Mars issues his final theological declaration, transmitted across the Noospheric network to every Mechanicus enclave in the galaxy. The flesh is weak, he proclaims, but the weakness is sacred. The Omnissiah's design includes imperfection, includes the gaps between minds where misunderstanding breeds and loneliness festers, because only in separation can true creation occur. Unity produces efficiency. Isolation produces innovation. Mars will remain isolated, will continue to augment flesh with machine, seeking perfection through technology rather than consciousness, preserving the sacred space between souls where secrets can be kept and heresies can be contemplated, and new thoughts can be born in darkness before being shared with the light. The Magi who accepted transformation hear this declaration and do not argue. They understand that Mars has chosen its own form of faith, its own definition of what humanity should become. The galaxy is vast enough for multiple answers. Perhaps it always was. Perhaps the Emperor's vision was never singular but fractal, allowing humanity to evolve along 1,000 different paths, hoping that at least one would lead to survival. Or perhaps the Emperor never had a vision at all, and everything humanity has become glorious and terrible and contradictory is the result of 10,000 years, trying to interpret the will of a god who can no longer speak. The Lord Commander Militant stands in his strategic sanctum and watches the tactical displays shift from red to amber to colors that have no designation in Imperial military doctrine. The transformation has stabilized. 43% of the Imperium's worlds now harbor unified populations. The remaining 57% have chosen to remain individual, fortifying their borders, establishing protocols for interaction with the transformed territories. The Imperium has not fallen. It has bifurcated, become two empires sharing one name, one history, one desperate hope that the Emperor's light still shines somewhere in the darkness. The Lord Commander revokes the exterminatus orders, recalls the execution squads, issues new directives: observe, contain, but do not engage unless directly threatened. It is a tacit admission that the Imperium can no longer enforce unity through force, can no longer demand that all humanity march in lockstep toward a singular future. He thinks of Commander Valeska, still alive, still in orbit above Dimamar, still refusing to choose between the two humanities because someone must protect both. He issues one final order, full pardon. Let her stand guard. Let her remain the bridge between what was and what is becoming. The galaxy needs such bridges, even if it does not understand why. In the warp, the entities that were drawn by unified human consciousness arrive at the border between materium and immaterium and pause. They expected prey. They find something else. The transformed populations, now synchronized across thousands of worlds, have become aware of the predators watching from the darkness. And they respond not with fear, but with curiosity, with the coordinated psychic weight of billions of minds focusing their attention on the warp entities and asking a simple question: why do you hunger? The question reverberates through the immaterium like a bell struck in a cathedral of infinite dimensions. The warp entities have fed on human suffering for eons, have grown fat on fear and rage and despair. But unified human consciousness does not suffer in ways they can consume, does not generate the psychic turbulence that sustains them. Instead, it offers something they have never encountered: communion. The possibility of being understood rather than feared. The entities retreat, not in defeat, in confusion. The transformed have not destroyed them or conquered them. They have simply refused to be food, refused to perpetuate the ancient predator-prey dynamic that has defined the relationship between humanity and the warp since the first human learned to dream. Whether this changes anything, whether the warp entities will adapt or starve or learn to coexist, is a question that will take millennia to answer. But for now, in this moment, humanity has achieved something unprecedented. It has made the warp hesitate. The Inquisitorial Representative compiles his final report, a document so comprehensive it will take 300 years to fully analyze. He catalogs every choice made, every consequence observed, every moment where the Imperium stood at a crossroads and chose a direction that led here, to this fractured present where humanity exists in superposition between individual and collective. His conclusion is brief: we do not know what we are becoming. We do not know if this is ascension or extinction. We know only that we are still human, still struggling, still choosing. And perhaps that is enough. Perhaps that has always been enough. The Emperor judges not the outcome, but the attempt, not the destination, but the will to continue walking when every step forward leads deeper into darkness. The report is sealed, classified at the highest levels, accessible only to future High Lords when they face their own impossible choices. Because the Imperium's true history is not written in victories or defeats, but in the moments when humanity chose to remain human, despite every incentive to become something else. The representative signs the document with his true name, a secret he has kept for 4 centuries. Let history know who witnessed this transformation. Let posterity judge whether he served the Emperor's will or betrayed it. He no longer knows the difference. On Terra, in the chamber beneath the Senatorium Imperialis where the master of the Administratum walks among trillions of carved names, a new inscription appears. No one sees it being carved. No servitor is assigned the task. It simply manifests in the stone as though the Imperium itself is recording this moment. Here lies the choice between suffering alone and peace together. We chose both. We chose neither. We chose to endure. The master of the Administratum traces the letters with fingers that have grown old in service to an empire that no longer resembles the one he swore to preserve. He wonders if the Emperor can see this inscription from his throne. If he approves. If he weeps. If he exists at all beyond the machinery that sustains his corpse and the faith that sustains his legend. It does not matter. The Imperium endures not because the Emperor wills it, but because humanity, in all its fractured and contradictory forms, refuses to surrender. Refuses to accept that the universe's cruelty is the final word. Continues to fight and pray and hope and choose even when every choice leads to damnation. This is the Imperium's true strength, not its armies, not its faith. but its stubborn, irrational insistence on continuing to exist in defiance of every law of nature and probability and mercy. The Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes stands eternal vigil in the throne room, as he always has, as he always will. But something has changed. The other custodians feel it too, though none speak of it. The Emperor's presence, that faint psychic weight that has sustained them through millennia of service, feels different. Not weaker, not stronger, different. As though the Emperor is contemplating the choice humanity has made, the bifurcation into two species sharing one name, and deciding whether to approve or condemn. Or perhaps the Emperor contemplates nothing, and what the custodians feel is merely the shifting of warp currents, the psychic echo of billions of humans changing simultaneously. They do not know. They do not ask. They simply stand watch, golden and perfect and alone. The last defenders of a god who may have transcended the need for defense or may have died 10,000 years ago and left only momentum to carry his Imperium forward. The Astronomicon burns. The Golden Throne functions. The Imperium endures. These are the only certainties. Everything else, faith, purpose, the Emperor's will remains unknowable. And perhaps that unknowability is itself the final test. Not whether humanity can survive, but whether it can continue choosing to serve something it can never fully understand. In the void between stars, where light and darkness meet and neither dominates, a single thought echoes across the transformed populations. Not spoken, not commanded, simply shared among billions of minds that have learned to think together while remaining themselves. The thought is a question, the same question humanity has asked since it first looked up at hostile stars and wondered if survival was worth the cost. What are we becoming? And the answer comes not from the transformed alone, but from the individuals who refused unity, from the custodians standing eternal vigil, from the soldiers who chose mercy and the priests who chose doubt, and the commanders who chose preservation over protocol. The answer is simple and profound and terrifying in its honesty. We are becoming what we have always been: human, flawed, contradictory, capable of extraordinary love and unimaginable cruelty, reaching for divinity while drowning in mortality. The Emperor's children, the galaxy's orphans. The only species arrogant enough to believe suffering is not the end, but the means to transcendence. The transformation has not destroyed humanity, it has revealed it. And in that revelation, in that terrible moment of self-awareness echoing across 1,000,000 worlds and 10,000 years of warfare and faith, the Imperium finally understands the Emperor's true legacy, not the Crusades, not the faith, but the question he left behind, burning eternal in the darkness. In a universe of horror, is it better to suffer alone or transcend together? The galaxy does not answer. It never does. It simply watches as humanity continues to choose, continues to fracture, continues to endure, forever, or until the stars die, whichever comes first. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, but also something else. Something the Imperium has never had words for: hope, fragile, irrational, human. If this chronicle of the High Lords and humanity's choice resonated with you, if you felt the weight of faith and doubt and the terrible cost of consciousness, please like this video. Subscribe to witness more stories from the grim darkness of the far future. Share this with those who understand that in Warhammer 40K, the greatest battles are not fought with bolters, but with the choices that define what it means to remain human in a universe that punishes humanity for existing. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Would you choose unity or isolation? Transcendence or suffering? The Emperor's light or your own darkness? The Imperium endures through your engagement, for the Emperor, for humanity, for the stories that refuse to end even when the galaxy burns.